All right, we are live. Welcome everyone to Coffee Time with Masterminds. We're so happy to see everyone, and thank God it's Friday, right? Welcome, welcome. Today's episode is a topic that is driving nonprofits to come back to the table and reframe how they do fund development. It is it is an area where nonprofits are struggling, and our hope is to tackle some of your pressing questions. Like leadership, fundraising has had to look very different during this time. We are still in a time of rapid change and a lot of uncertainty, and we don't know how long we're going to be there.
Mm.
Nonprofits have had to cancel their events. They're wondering about their own major donors and how to approach funders and foundations on what to fund currently and in the future. And we hope to touch on all those three areas today in our show. So grab a cup of coffee, join the conversation that we hope will last as long as your cup of coffee. And if you are new to Coffee Time with Masterminds, this is a half-hour weekly show on Facebook Live where we talk about urgent matters for leaders of mission-based organizations. Join the conversation by putting your comments in the chat box so that we can also engage you in what you're going through in your nonprofit. So let's start with introductions, and I want to start with the audience out there. Please tell us your name and where you're from. We've had people from all over the country. It's been so exciting. And 2 weeks ago, we had someone from Ghana, our first international guest. We still remember her name, Ivy from Ghana. We're hoping you're back. But
Hi,
it's
Ivy.
been so exciting. So I am Cynthia Rojas, and I am the principal and founder of To Your Growth. I am also an associate consultant with Field Partners, and I want to welcome our next panelist, Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Cynthia. Hi, Peta. Hi, everyone. How are you doing today?
Hi, Renee.
My name's Rebecca Tuttle. I'm the founder and principal of Grant Right Now and Grant Writing for Good. We help schools, organizations, and businesses find, write, and secure grant funding, and we teach them how to do it. You know, Cynthia, before we get started, I wanted just to pick up on a quick thing. So we're about 8 weeks into this pandemic, 8 weeks into our stay-at-home order, but this is our 5th Coffee Time episode, which I think is pretty unbelievable. And our audience is growing, and thanks everyone for keep showing up. We have a lot more episodes planned. So if anyone out there has an idea for an episode, be sure to pop in the chat. What would you like us to talk about? I mean, we have a pretty hefty agenda coming at you, but we are more than happy to include other things. So please give us some ideas, a shout out, please.
Yeah, welcome. And I also want to welcome Renee. Renee joins us every Friday. It is so nice to see you. Thank you, Renee. All right, our next panelist is Peta Blakely. How are you?
Great. Thank you, Cynthia. Hi, Rebecca. My name is Peta Blakely. I am the founder and principal of Blakely Consulting, and I help mission-based organizations measure and maximize their impact.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. I want to remind everybody, let's introduce ourselves. Tell us your name and where you're from, and we'll give you a shout out as we move along in the program. All right, so the topic everyone wants to talk about. Rebecca has been working really hard with nonprofits and small businesses and helping them reframe their fund development strategy. She keeps a pulse on what's happening in nonprofits and foundations throughout the pandemic, and she's been working hard with them. So I want to begin with Rebecca. Why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit about what's going on.
So, as many of us know, fundraising, grant writing, development as a whole, it's shifted pretty dramatically, almost overnight, even to the point where this pandemic has many of us wondering, how are we going to raise the funds that we have been previously raising through events and other opportunities that we pursue in our grant writing and development strategy once this lockdown is lifted? And without these necessary funds, how is our nonprofit or our business going to continue to serve those customers and clients? And what is that post-COVID service going to look like? You see, it's not enough to ask, how are we going to proceed through this and make up the revenues we lost? We need to be asking ourselves, and often and asking our nonprofit community as well, how are we going to sustain our organization's revenues, the resources, the support, and the partnerships in preparation for the end of this pandemic, a potential second wave, and dare we say, even possibly a third. So as we're experiencing this influx in referrals because more and more people are requesting our support, how can we expand our outreach to our community, to those who newly need our service, while also continuing service to those who have been regularly utilizing and accessing our services? And with these gaps in funding, how are we going to continue to serve all of these people, post-pandemic? Now, I'm not trying to scare you with all this. I mean, this is something that we want to think about not overnight, like the pandemic feels like it hit, but it's something that we should be using this time now to think strategically and do some of that planning, because none of us really knows what the future is going to hold for fundraising, grant development, or even fund development in a whole. And so what I'm helping my clients do is really think about, beyond the immediate fundraising and events that we are canceling right now, we need to start revising and revisiting our fund development strategy. And that includes donations, grant revenues, memberships if you have them, especially if your organization is also in this lockdown mode. Once organizations start doing this, really thinking about it and putting some of those strategies in place, then you're really, really setting yourself up for success.
So I have been hearing a lot of concern from organizations that are canceling their big spring fundraising events, their galas, things like that. And as a person who's seen a lot of organizations pull these events together, I feel like there's some organizations that are definitely really good at it. It's very effective, but I've seen a lot of other organizations just burn through a lot of employee morale pulling together these events that I'm not really sure there's as much return there as they're hoping for. Maybe they're aspirational in their planning.
I think you're right, Peter. I ran a fundraising team for 5 years, and we were very event heavy when I inherited the team. And I have to tell you, it is exhausting, and morale can get low. And when you're doing one event after another, you don't have time for the post-event follow-up, which is the whole purpose of the event. Imagine having 300-400 people at your event, two-thirds of them you've never met. What a great opportunity to engage potentially new donors. And if you don't have that kind of time, you're kind of just doing an event for the event's sake and not really maximizing on your return on investment. And I can't stress that enough. And we did events that landed quite a large net profit, but the potential of what we could have done was so far lost. So I actually think this time, while nonprofits and trust me, people are calling about this and emailing us about this, nonprofits are really struggling. What am I going to do about my event? It's my main revenue stream. I also think this is an opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. To tap into people's creativity, especially going back to what Peta said about events are exhausting, and people maybe are thinking, maybe we should switch it up. Don't hesitate, right? Last week, we're talking about big goals, setting big goals. Maybe make this one of your goals. And given that what you said, Cynthia, about oftentimes events are our biggest generator of revenue and support, that's a pretty sizable goal. So take advantage of that planning time right now.
Yeah. Another thing that we've talked about, and Peter and I laughed when we were talking about the show, is how these events are a big deal for us, right? You buy a nice dress, especially the really fancy ones, and your husband wears a tux or your partner wears a tux, and you go out and it's a night out, and you go and there's this big ballroom and the food is great and the dancing, and then you go home, and the next time I may get a thank you, but after that, the next time I hear about the nonprofit is when they want to sell me another ticket the year after. And so missed opportunities, and it doesn't make the person who went feel really good, because this was a big deal for us. And somehow it wasn't as big of a deal that I was there when they were during the fundraiser. And so nonprofits need to think about becoming donor centric. How many dresses do you have, Peter?
Oh gosh, well, a lot of the ones that I used to wear to galas don't fit anymore.
Oh, no. Same here.
Well, we'll have to wear them on coffee time.
We're doing like Friday night coffee time, and we'll wear all our old ball gowns.
That would be great. That would be great.
Yeah, I mean, I have always felt like when I go to a fundraising event at whatever stage in my life and my personal finances, that event was a big deal, right? And I'm never going to be the biggest donor at the event, but I often come away feeling like there was so much anticipation. I felt like I was making a big investment. And then I get disappointed, like, oh, they weren't as excited to see me as I was to go to this event.
Yeah, no, that happens. That happens. Rebecca, so what can nonprofits do? What's the alternative?
Sure. So I think the conversation we were just having now about that thank you and how meaningful it is, and maybe pieces of it are missing, this is invaluable feedback to nonprofits who are planning events, because I suspect that they don't even really realize that that's how some people feel who are attending their events. So I'm glad we're talking about this today so that they can be more mindful of that, and many of them are. But I would say the first thing you want to focus on is not the fundraiser or the shift in the funding itself, but it's the change, the overall change to the organization. Now, Cynthia, you're an expert in change management, so chime in here, as often as you like. But ask yourselves, has your organization had a change in leadership, a change in staffing, maybe even volunteers? What is different now that wasn't there before? And what is it that you anticipate is going to be different later? So after all, we rely very heavily on volunteers, on our board members, the people around us within our community to help us pull off these big goals, these big fundraising events, and our membership drives, our capital campaigns. So the people in our circles are the ones that are really helping drive our mission of raising these funds. So figuring out who is there to help us and where we need to start, that's key to any shift in your fundraising future. The next thing I would do is I would take a look at your outreach strategy. So I'm hosting, and if you'd like the whiteboard page here, just PM me and I'll send you the slide, no problem at all. But I'm hosting 8 days of outreach. We start on Wednesday, May 20th at 7 p.m. And it's going to be held in my Go Time Grant Writers group right here on Facebook. So if you're on my page right now at Grant Right Now, just click the link to join the group. You're in. We're doing 8 days of outreach, and I'm be glad to have you join us there so we can talk more in depth about some of these things. So with respect to outreach, we're talking about how are we reaching our donors and funders and the people who really help drive our mission and our work forward. So have you been in touch with them? And by that, I mean, have you called them? Have you sent them a message? Hey, here's what's going on in our organization. How are you doing with all of this pandemic and everything that's going on? Here's how we're helping people. Not only will our fundraising look different in post-COVID, but so will our outreach efforts. And that's really important to tack on to our strategy sessions as we figure out how to reframe our fundraising. The way we serve the clients, the way we engage with volunteers, that interaction with the donors. We need a plan for our outreach that's going to keep our mission available for people today, tomorrow, and sustainably thereafter. So it's not enough to figure out, what do we do today? What do we do when the lockdown's lifted? We need to figure out, how are we going to sustain our organization once our delivery of our mission is drastically changed and different? And now's the time to think creatively about all of that, so that we can start to think about, how are we going to make up those revenue losses through that changed outreach, and engage the people in our community now so that we can keep them connected. And later on, when we're regrouping and starting to implement some of these new practices we've developed, then we can start to move beyond the shelter in place that's been going on for almost 2 months now, and continue to operate in different form thereafter.
So what you just said that kind of blew my mind is, the fundraising strategy needs to be integrated with the organization's overall strategy, right? And just as we're strategy mapping our programs to where our organization is going, development has to be part of that conversation. It's not just running along behind trying to make sure that those programs can operate, but they got to be at the table. This is all one organization.
Right. It's a community conversation. It's not just, the suits in the room. Remember, I told you about the suits in the room deciding what to do. We should be talking to our clients and customers and saying, how are you accessing our services? Do you feel like that's available to you the way that you need it? And if we were to shift, what would that look like for you? And do you have any suggestions? And bringing all of that conversation to the table. Absolutely.
Yeah, and also that communication between program managers and development. So the development really has a closer understanding of what's going on in programs, what's driving the need, and what's working and what's not working in programs than I think they sometimes have in organizations.
We have a comment from Renee. I'm sorry, Cynthia. Do you want to read out Renee's comment?
Yes, Renee, our big fundraiser was a cruise to the Middle East. Oh, Renee, that's
awesome. Not happening.
I know. Well, fundraiser. That's a great idea. But it was
awesome.
Scheduled for July 2020, but due to the climate, it isn't possible. And then she scheduled a garden party, which was also canceled. Renee, what are you doing in place of this? Or or are you trying to find ideas? Let us know. And we also want to welcome Benjamin Burgos. Great presentation, very informal. Thank you, Ben. Okay,
I think, so Renee is really bringing up that point of the focus on the event itself.
Yep.
And maybe that's not the right way to think about it. And maybe the question is, let me know if I'm understanding you correctly, Rebecca, not what event can I bring these people to, but how can I reach out and contact these people and talk to them and understand how they want to be engaged?
That, yes. And how can we continue to bring the people who support and rally around our mission together? Because remember, we don't just go to events because they're fun. I mean, they are fun. And I don't know, I might just show up in a cocktail dress next Friday, just saying.
It's fun. It's fun.
But they come because they care about our cause, and that in and of itself gives them that feeling, that sense of community. And that is really why we're bringing people together at events. The event is fun and it's a plus, but it's really to showcase our mission and the good work that we're trying so hard to do as nonprofits, so that people can see where their investment is going and what it's used for. And sometimes they just want to get to know you better, and that's a nice space to be able to do that. So it has a lot of meaning behind it.
Renee is saying, I've been in touch with my supporters and sending words of encouragement. That's exactly what we're talking about, Renee.
I'm going to say that the causes that we support or the organizations that we get involved with are a big part of our identity. I think people really want to be connected and aligned with something bigger than themselves. And mission-based organizations often are providing that opportunity for people.
Yeah, so I have a couple of questions, Rebecca. So we have organizations who may have 15 to 20 donors, and they can call them in a week and a half. And then we have some who have thousands of donors. What happens when you've done all your phone calls? What's next? Are we calling them 2 weeks later? And how do we deal with when we have thousands of donors?
Those are very good questions, and that speaks to the power of community, right? If I'm one person and I'm the development director, which I've served in that role a number of times, obviously I can't possibly do what I need to do every day in my role and then reach out to 3,000 people. It's not realistic. And they don't just want to hear from me. So bring your community together and divide and conquer, which again, we're going to do in our 8 days of outreach program that's coming up next week. But that is why you have to keep your community informed so that all together you can be reaching out to all of these donors and these folks to say, hey, this is what we're up to. Imagine if you had clients or customers reaching out to some of these donors and letting them know about the impact that your organization has had upon their life, their livelihood. I mean, there's nothing more powerful than that when you're reaching out to the folks who are making investments for you to be able to deliver your mission to the people you serve. So divide and conquer, but do it strategically so that you are all sharing the same frame of message. Now, of course, you don't want to script that client's message to the donor, but you do want to give them some talking points, some conversational frame to stay within so that the intentions of your conversation are all all tied back to your mission and to what your organization is about. Now, reaching out to that 10 to 15 people, okay, maybe I was the development director, I called them all myself, right? But we're going to use the power of a team here. So other people are going to help me with those 15 points of outreach. Once we've called them all, call them again in a few weeks. Connect with them on social media. Send them an article. Highlight something that you're doing. If you have some sort of virtual volunteerism right now, see if they're interested in helping out.
Yeah.
The way that we ask people to invest in us with time, talent, and resources is by getting to know them through relationship building and trust so that we can find out more about what their interests are so that we can match up their interests with what it is that we're asking them to do.
Yeah, I love that. We have a comment from Kate. So,
oh, hi, Kate. Kate's one of my students. Thanks, Kate.
oh, all right. Well, Kate has a tough question. So she said one thing that's come up from the discussions around rescheduling events is how to handle corporate sponsors. If you do a virtual event or even a small group event, how do you bring in corporate sponsors? Or do you see a shift toward forms of corporate support in this new environment?
Well, I think that's an excellent question, Kate.
Yeah.
And way to pack it on today. I mean, this is a really good show. So corporate sponsorship isn't only solicited or asked at the time of major fundraising events. I mean, we do corporate sponsors through capital campaigns. So there are other times that we would be, soliciting or making the ask for corporate support. You'll see that in nonprofits, they post platinum sponsor, and then they'll list those corporations at those different levels, or silver sponsor. Look around at other nonprofits and see of those other nonprofits, do they have donors and sponsors listed on their websites, and what are they sponsoring? So this is a really important time that we're in right now, because what we should be doing is not only asking for corporate support, we should be lending our own support to corporations, because businesses are hurting just as much as we are right now. So think about, in your outreach strategy, having those conversations with those corporations to let them know how you're doing and ask them, how can we go and support and help you?
One of the things, Rebecca, that I learned from a nonprofit I'm working with is that they have two major events. One is a breakfast and the other one is a run. And for the breakfast, they're not having the event virtually, but they are having a series of conversations virtually, and they're inviting the people who would have attended the breakfast. Now, they're also including their corporate sponsors in those conversations because companies want to let people know how they're supporting nonprofits, companies that are able to do this during this time. And this is an important, it's very important for their publicity because they want to feel connected to the community and they want to show that they're still showing up for us. So maybe it's a banner behind you, right? As you're having a conversation virtually, you bring in people to hear about a topic that your viewers would be interested in. Engage your corporate sponsors in that so that they can still show the community that they're in this with us, because a lot of them continue to support nonprofits.
Absolutely. And interview them. Ask them, why do you give to us? What resonates about our mission with the things that you care about as not only a corporation, but as a person?
Yeah.
You know, ask them to share their voice and then present that voice to the world. Not, oh, we have this corporate sponsor, they donated this much for this particular program. Here's what it did for us, right? That's what we hear all the time. Here's what your level or your money offered or let us do, right? People are looking for more specifics, especially now that we're all in this chaotic, unknown sphere that we're experiencing, right? They want those heartwarming stories. They want to hear real people speaking real, genuine conversation. It's comforting. So take advantage of that. And by take advantage, I don't mean take advantage of that, right?
Right. We definitely don't take advantage of people who own those stories.
Right. I mean, invite them in, and who knows, if they can't give right now, they're going to remember that you did that outreach, that sincere, genuine outreach, and they might donate pizza to your next event or pizza to your, or a gift card, or, you know, sponsor one of your newly formed post-COVID organized events. Yeah.
And that's an opportunity for your development staff and your evaluation staff to be collaborating. You know, those teams should really be closely aligned. And what I see happening in organization is development gets the money. And then at the end of the year, they're supposed to write a report and say what happened. And that's the only time that they're touching base with the program staff. But there should really be a very close partnership, not just about the metrics, but also about the storytelling and how the program is going, but close partnership during the entire year.
Yeah. So as you can see, we could talk about this all day. There's so many more points, Rebecca, that you made that we didn't even get to touch on. How to become donor-centric, the fact that nonprofits share a double bottom line. They have to serve their clients, but also pay attention to their partners in this effort, because donors are your partners, as foundations and funders are. And Rebecca reminds me of that every day. We are coming toward the end of our show, and I just want to get a sense of what are your takeaways for today. So, Peter, let's start with you. What's your main takeaway from today's show?
You know, my main takeaway was, again, about strategy mapping. And I've been thinking a lot recently about strategy mapping for programs to the organization's mission. But I'm a lot clearer now on how you strategy map other departments, like development, into the organization's overall mission and vision.
Okay. My biggest takeaway is how important outreach is, and not to assume that just because someone not donate now, they're no longer a donor. I really appreciate, Rebecca, your mantra about reaching out and asking your donors, your funders, your foundations, how are they doing? Your corporate sponsors, like what a great conversation starter. And there are, you've reminded me, there are nonprofits that I adore and I support, and I haven't heard from them, and I wonder how they're doing. And so I think that's a great takeaway for today's show. Rebecca, you want to wrap us up?
Of course. Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming today. So again, just change happens when we least expect it, right? That's part of that adrenaline, that rush to think creatively on our feet and differently. Mm-hmm. And in a pandemic, we can think that we're prepared, but more often than not, right, we're finding out that we are not prepared. And so how can we better prepare for fundraising going forward when none of us knows for sure the effects of the social distancing, the elimination of social gathering-based fundraising and events, and our traditional avenues of fund development and revenue as nonprofits is drastically shifting. So be intentional about your fund development strategies and your outreach plan as well. Join us May 20th, 7 p.m., right in my Facebook page, right in my group, Go Time Grant Writers at Grant Right Now, and bring a colleague with you, bring a friend, bring a neighbor, bring an organization that you donate to. If nothing else, we're going to see how we can help our clients move the needle on their fundraising goals right now and post-COVID. And how are we keeping our community engaged and involved in our mission? That's to your point you just made mention of, Cynthia. You haven't heard from them? Well, a good organization who maybe is doing all of the chaos work right now, maybe they don't have the time or the thought right now to reach out to people, but a good organization that's done this, stewardship and outreach, their donors are going to reach out to them to see how it's going. So how can we continue to serve and to help people, and how can we move our fundraising reframe forward? That's a big task. I'm popping that one on big goal.
Big goal, big goal. We like big goals. Big goal. All right.
So if you got great value from our show today, make sure that you like, comment, or share.
Yes, and we use your comments and then bring those conversations to the next show. And we'll see you next Friday at 10:30 Facebook Live, Coffee Time with Masterminds. Have an amazing weekend, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.